let's hear from our amazing hosts. So the Work on Climate team, and Michonne is going to basically give you the lowdown on just how totally awesome this volunteer community is.
Yes, thank you, Andy, and welcome in everyone. I'm glad you joined our session today. My name is Michonne. I'm joining from Michigan with our Work on Climate team here in the US. I and a few other colleagues who have joined this call are part of a large volunteer team for Work on Climate, whose mission is to help people turn their professional work into the building blocks for a regenerative green economy. So we do that by cultivating professional networks, including a global Slack community with over 32,000 members. We offer free climate expert hours and produce events focused on building skills, connections, and knowledge. So if you're interested in joining us, please check out the links that I'll be dropping in the chat. And please also know that we will be recording this session and all of the resources will be shared with you all who have attended in RSVP. And then after Andy's presentation, feel free to connect with us. And thanks for joining, and I'll pass it back to Andy so we can get started.
All right, thank you very much. So the most important thing is that the value of the next 90 minutes is not the next 90 minutes. The value of the next 90 minutes comes from what you're going to do afterwards, the thing that you'll do differently because you've been here. And the reason I always start with this is because I know that there is a tendency to feel like you're making progress if you go to webinars, and that is simply not true. You have to do something because you've turned up in order to make progress, which sounds incredibly patronizing. And you'll find that I often have to try and walk the line between patronizing and helpful. It's a constant dilemma for me, but I want to start with that. So as we go through the content and advice for today, think about the thing that resonates most and how you can bring it into your own journey. The second thing that I want you to take from today is that without structure, you will fail. And the barrier between where you are now and the contribution you want to make are many. There's internal and externally. There's the market shifts, there's overwhelming complexity, there's imposter syndrome, overwhelm. And without having a step-by-step approach, the amount of time that you might waste is massive. So the one thing is, you have to have structure. So you're here, I hope, because you want to make an impact. You want to make the world a better place. You want to fill the existential void left by your potentially pointless work that you're currently suffering under, I'm not sure, or just because you want to get a job. But I'm here because of one question. And that question was this. Now, this came from the CMO of one of the world's most prominent French cosmetic companies, who you will know. And it was in a boardroom with 30 of their leadership team, eagerly awaiting my answer to this question. And I was live on a 2-meter screen, the head of the room, from my home office. And I basically spent the past 3 weeks pushing my team, working evenings, spending all of the previous weekend working literally, genuinely around the clock to pull the data together to tell this story. My team were exhausted. I was on the edge of breakdown. And when this question came midway through the session, I just had this white noise and the increasingly loud voice in my own head, which just said, what the fuck am I doing with my life? Really? So the hours, the stress, the fake urgency, all for answering this question, and the world is on fire. And I've spent and pushed, actual humans to the point of breakdown to answer this kind of pointless drivel. So I took this moment as a sign, and I quietly quit. I took my existing coaching and mentoring practice in a direction that wasn't aimed at helping corporate high performers get better at things that they didn't care about and I didn't care about, but actually help them find the work that matters. And that is broadly how my route to doing this started. It's a route that was kind of typical before that. It was business school and consultancy and a stint at Citigroup doing their internal strategy, and then stepping into advisory roles and working for, taking startups through to successful exits. All of that work, I took it as firsthand experience of multiple career changes, shifts that applied different elements of having to figure out what was going to be next from the massive corporate world and then back to tiny startup world. And I realized that this experience was the biggest lever that I could pull. It was going to be helping bring the talent to the forefront to basically the cutting edge of the crisis that we face. And now I've helped hundreds of professionals get started in climate without having to start over, because the people I want to help are the smart, capable, professional people who are mid-career, who are realizing that they want to do something more. Today, I want to help you. And one of the ways that we want to do that is to really focus on the on-the-ground reality of what it's like when you are facing these challenges. And so we're going to theme this discussion around a concept called the dip. And so what we're going to cover today is what is the dip, the 4 causes of the dip, and then I'm going to try, this is new, did it yesterday with another group on the same chat, an experimental follow along LinkedIn performance trick. So when we get to that point, everyone is going to need their browser open and we're going to try and do it live. And then there should be time for some Q&A at the end because it's quite a small group. Okay. So structures and processes. It's all about structures and processes. Before we get into that, I have a question. And this is why, if you can be on camera, this is great. My question is, have you ever learned how to surf? Is that a slow nod from Emilio? Is that a yes?
Yeah.
Chris says no. Sue, have you ever tried to learn how to surf? Anybody else in the chat? No. Okay. Did take some lessons. Right, that's what I mean. Okay. Right, what I have back in the day, actually, I used to have hair longer than Nicolette, longer than yourself, actually, Nicole. I used to have like big, long blonde hair. And I used to sit and watch the people who could surf, the people who knew what they were doing, sitting out past the breakers, effortlessly just leaning into a rolling set, popping to their feet and gliding down the glassy face of a wave. And it looked awesome. Who would not want to experience that connection to the ocean, to the fundamental energies involved? Frankly, just being that cool. And so borrowed a surfboard, started paddling out. And as the breakers came at me, the white water, I got pushed off, I got tumbled, I got salt water up my nose, I came up gasping and panicking just before the next one hit. And I genuinely, eventually was just washed up unceremoniously back onto the beach. And I nearly quit. But it was hard and it was long and it often felt overwhelming. And it certainly didn't feel like I belonged out there or that I was actually ever really going to be a surfer at all. But a friend of mine took me aside and showed me the process of getting past the breakers, right? You duck under the waves with a duck dive. You use a skill that I didn't even know existed. I needed to practice it a lot before I could even get to where the surfing started. And I kept going, and slowly I built the strength and the skills and the balance to actually paddle in the wave, get to my feet, and be riding it to the shore. And it was freaking awesome. Probably even more so because it was on the other side of hard. So all of that hard work, years later, as part of my research as into behavioral psychology and neuropsychology, I came to understand as the theory of the dip. And I immediately recognized my journey, or the journey of anybody doing something new for the first time, as being the perfect fit for the dip. Because the dip is this. It is experienced universally by anyone wanting to do something that they are not already doing. And it shows up in lots of other places as well. This shape keeps coming up. So this particular example is the Gartner adoption or hype life cycle. But it turns up is in pop psychology, like the Dunning-Kruger effect, like confidence and expectation. But it is a normal human reaction to uncertainty and identity shift. And it occurs when like the old success rules no longer fit, but the new ones aren't formed yet. So we can't feel comfortable. We don't have certainty about what we're doing. And it exists because our brains crave control over everything else. And when we don't have control, then we overthink and we stall. And that stalling can feel like overwhelm. And it can feel like fear or resistance. It can feel like imposter syndrome and self-doubt. And it is made a whole lot worse when you are the lone voice in your peer group and you feel like you're trying to do this on your own. So if you feel stuck, congratulations. It just means that you're human and that you care about getting to the other side of hard and doing what you want to do. So we're going to pick off those 4 things one by one. Now, you will, of course, be very familiar with Elquist and et al. 2020 study of executive function and the 2012 Clark et al. Challenge paralysis work, the fantastic seminal work of Roloff in their 2017 work on brain cognition, and on and on. Fortunately, if you're not familiar with that work, I am, and I have decided not to give you all of the details. If you want, I can send you the articles, but I'm going to save you that. And we're basically just going to look at uncertainty, fear, imposter syndrome, and community, because they are the four pillars, the 4 horsemen of your failure, 4 reasons why this is so difficult. So the first of those is overwhelm. And the alternative to overwhelm is clarity. So it is focus in the face of options. And this applies as much as when you're looking for a new role as if you're in a new role and you have to choose how you allocate your resources. Now, in order to move forward, you have to pick a direction. You have to find a particular career path. You have to find a niche in which to work. But your resources are limited, and a determined single-minded focus is required to get the best return on your time. Because that sort of classic concept of, well, I'm keeping my options open and I'm casting a wide net, that is a terrible strategy because your efforts become too scattered and people can't know you for a particular thing. So you're having to literally do all of the work yourself and there is no networking effect. And your ability to find the small group of people and make a meaningful connection is so much harder when it's a wide group of people that you've got mixed messages to. So you have to marshal all of your efforts towards one thing, one problem to solve for one kind of person. And you can do this sequentially if you want, but one at a time. You have to decide. Now, I'm married into a Greek family, and my Greek wife, true to all of the stereotypes, does give me the Greek and Latin origins of English words. And she recently pointed out that decide has the same root as insecticide, homicide, pesticide, decide. And so originally, decide wasn't about choosing one, it was killing off the alternatives. So it's about improving our ability to say no. So the key to being able to say no is the criteria, because all of decision science points to the fact that the most valuable return on your time when trying to decide isn't looking at options, isn't trying to make comparisons. It is the amount of time that you spend developing clear criteria that you can use to say no to the options that you then see. So if you're spending time looking at job boards and you're using job boards as a way to try and figure out what you want to do, stop. Stop looking at job boards because it is a terribly ineffective way of deciding a future career path, because job descriptions are poorly written. And what you end up doing is you try matching what you want and what you think you can do to a shopping list of other people that is too poorly defined. And so until you have this clarity of what is important and how you will know when you found what you're looking for the answer, you're wasting time. So please don't start by looking at job boards. Start by defining your criteria. Your ability to say no depends on this filtering, this criteria. And I use this filter analogy in all of my work because it's just so important. So there are 4 different levels, 4 different types of criteria. There are the fundamentals of life design, which I guess are the things that the things that you would probably describe a job if you were telling your friends down the pub or your parents. It's things like there is travel, or it is for a big company, or I work from home, or it fits around having kids. It's like the shape of work is what I think of is as when I'm describing the fundamentals. So these are often quite easy to ask because it's the type of questions that are always asked when people start talking about work. It's how it fits into your life. But until you've given that sufficient thought and written them down and are then prepared to figure out a way of telling if a particular type of work is going to meet this criteria before you start applying or looking, then you're missing this opportunity to take things off the list and start this deciding process. So underneath the fundamentals are your strengths. Now, I don't mean sort of the sort of skills that you have. I mean your character traits. And our character's traits are, unless you have some kind of psychotic episode in your early 20s, they're typically fixed in terms of personality traits by about late teens. So if you've ever done any kind of strengths assessment or things like Myers-Briggs or the Gallup 2.0 or any of those sort of tests, perfectly valid. Don't waste your time doing it again and again. What we're looking for is a way of translating these strengths into the functional elements of the work. Underneath that are values. Now, values is a very awkward thing to talk about because people tend to describe values in the biggest possible picture, like corporations are bad or plastic in oceans are bad. And whilst those things may or may not be true, but probably mainly are true, that doesn't really help you when you're trying to make a decision. So values like, do you value meritocracy or do you value recognition? Because if you value meritocracy, you are far more likely to find a degree of fit in a small startup. Because when the shit hits the fan and a client needs something on a Thursday, everybody is working on a Wednesday to get it done because there's only 10 of you there. There's a lot more cultural set around meritocracy. And if you value recognition, then one of the big strat houses, a big consulting company, where every 3 months there is a fixed 360 performance review, which is then scored and rated. And then everyone is put on a bell curve. And the top 10% are rewarded, and the bottom 10% are fired out of a cannon through a mesh through the window. Then it's very much more clear that recognition fits. So you can start to use these kind of divisions to say, okay, well, if I value meritocracy, then I may not find that in the big consulting space. So I'm just going to stop looking for sustainability manager or sustainability consultant for large corporates. And maybe you might find small, nimble sustainability consultancies where there is a more of a meritocratic approach because there's only 10 people there. So you can use these to start separating out and start building a hypothesis. And the last one is self and identity. Now, this is a massive, massive part of the equation, and it is so frequently overlooked. And what I mean by self is I come from the Jungian school of psychology, right? We are many selves. If you've seen the film Inside Out, you kind of know what I'm talking about. There's many different voices which are bubbling up and working through us at any particular time, all vying for dominance depending on the stimulus. So there might be a protective Nicole or a creative Nicole or a nurturing Nicole, but there might also be a perfectionist Nicole who's in there, who's sort of whispering in your ear that it's not good enough to be sent out yet. Or there might be a procrastinator or a self-saboteur, or there might be or the imposter syndrome. So these voices, this sense of self, it's really useful to listen and identify, give them a name, and then be able to bring them to the fore. Because if you can recognize them, you can have a dialogue and you can almost sort of interview the parts of you separately that you want to be more of in the future. And then ask, would this kind of work be something that kind of part of me would enjoy? And at the same time, you're finding the barriers. You'll be listening for the perfectionist that will be stopping you taking the action that you know you should be taking. So there's a lot of work in this area in self. It's one of my favorite areas to work, but it is also quite esoteric. So in my world, there is coaching and there is mentoring, and the bottom of the triangle is therapist. I'm not a therapist. I work directly between coaching and mentoring. Coaching is asking leading questions. Mentoring is telling you what to do. And the reason I work in the middle is because sometimes life's just too short for leading questions, just want help. But at the same time, it's this area of the barrier is you, which is all in the coaching world. Okay, so we build the filter, and now we've got the idea of being able to put things into the top of the filter to see how well they fit. But the challenge is, it is extremely unlikely that you know enough about any particular future career path in order to be able to make a meaningful decision. So firstly, solving that on your own is incredibly slow. Trying to figure it out by figuring it out takes too long. The world is on fire. We don't have time. So there are two things that we can do. First of all, you can list out some of these fundamentals, some of these criteria, and then you use the criteria list to go and get ideas and information. You build a sheet that says, these are the top 6 things which are most important to me. You take out any kind of past experience so it doesn't cloud the issue. And then you send it to groups of people and say, well, what would someone with these criteria be good at and enjoy doing? Now, you might have seen a few of these kind of questions pop up on Work on Climate, because I often recommend to my clients that this is a great place to share that kind of question, because you have the eyeballs. And look, honestly, everybody loves making vicarious decisions for other people. It's Solomon's paradox. It's very easy to give other people advice. It's so obvious. They should definitely be doing this, but you can't see it yourself. So use the hive mind to gather ideas. The next part is this, well, how do you find out about these suggestions or these hypotheses that you might have already in the fastest possible way? Well, this is where we can start to bring more structure, and we can use some design thinking. So we've built the criteria. We've done some ideation by seeking alternative points of view. The next bit is fastest possible loops around this prototyping, stress testing this idea so that we can start to understand whether this is actually something that you do want to do. Because looking at lists and doing desktop research and procrastinating through planning, it's just too slow. So you have to do. Doing is the key. But doing has a resource cost. So we minimize that by climbing the commitment ladder. The commitment ladder is this. Most people start with this conclusion. Say, right, okay, when I grow up, I'm going to be this, but I need to do a 6-month training plan in order to be able to qualify in order to do that. Well, that is a colossal risk, because there's a possibility that you get 6 months in and then realize that actually it wasn't that. So instead of doing that, it's the smallest, shortest possible test that you can bring enough information back about your hypothesis, about what it would be like to work in a small consultancy as a sustainability consultant. Bring that information back and then apply your criteria. And the answer is always find the people, not the jobs, not the boards, not the descriptions. Find the people. And resources on Work on Climate and Open Door Climate are great for this. Now, don't go and ask them for a conversation, because the answer will be no. Find them on LinkedIn and then follow their content and join their conversation. Comment on their commentary. Show that you take an interest. Learn what they have to say. And then build up social capital to then ask for a conversation. I'm a career coach and I get asked for, can I have half an hour of your time to pick your brains? And the answer is no. Because if you haven't got enough thinking to know that, well, anyway, rant over. The point is, if you're going to do some cold outreach, make sure you've warmed up enough by at least understanding what they are currently talking about, and what, like, if you're visible and on their radar because you're showing support by promoting their content, even with commentary, you can ask questions very easily. And the last part of this conversation today. We talk about community and different easy ways of doing that. So I'm not going to go into too much now. The point is, though, that you can go from these tiny micro steps to finding a proof project. So what could you do that would be tangible and demonstrable that shows your interest in this particular area? And as you're doing this, you are building this community of people and you are leaving this breadcrumb trail of visible credibility. And this is so important because that group of people, this community, will be your future colleagues or collaborators or co-founders. Okay, so the point of this is that we have these loops: build and test and learn. Bring it back to the filter and say, based on what I've learned, am I now prepared to persevere or do I want to pivot? That is the only question worth focusing on. Because what happens is you slowly move towards a more and more refined view of the career path that you want to take. But you're doing it by taking action. You're doing it whilst building your community. You're doing it whilst also developing this breadcrumb trail of proof. So rather than sitting and figuring it out, you are participating and moving forward. And these loops, the shorter and faster they are, the more momentum that builds. And this is how the opportunities come to you. This is how that famous quote about 70% of jobs come through your loose network, which is Andrew Burkus. This is what he's talking about. It's this building this visible credibility in the right people. Okay, so the other thing which is useful to note is that celebrating the pivots just as much as the perseveres. The persevere is, okay, I've had 5 conversations. Do I want to persevere and commit next step up the ladder and maybe do a week's online course in this? Or better, which has to be cohort based because you're looking for people all the time. Or go and take a day out of work and go and do a day or 2 days conference. It's the next incremental step of this commitment that you're looking for. But pivot might be something, and this is usually with my clients, tend to find that it's not a, no, that's not it. It's much more of a, oh, well, this part of the question is actually way more interesting than what I thought about. But I've only came to that because I was speaking to someone or participating in part of this work that I realized that it's not actually sustainability consultancy. It's sustainability consultancy in the built environment for residential homes. And it gets focus and focus and focus, focus. And so these pivots aren't huge swings to say, actually, no, I went from sustainability consultancy and now I think I'm going to be a policy advisor. That's very, very rare that we have such a big swing. So celebrate the tweaks. There's a whole bunch of quotes about, all science is learning and there is no such thing as failure, only information. That's the kind of ethic that we're talking about here. Okay, so that is a very intense pile of information. That's basically the first third of a 6-week program that I normally teach. This idea of focus on the criteria, fill the funnel creatively, and then do these test and learns. So we're going to take a break. I'm going to take a break for 2 or 3 minutes. We are currently, by my clock, we are at N04, where N is the hour of wherever you are sitting. And so, maths fans, I'm going to say everyone back by N07. How about that? 3-minute break just to shake it out. And okay, thumbs up. Thank you very much. Okay, right. I'm also going to go off camera so you don't feel like you're being watched while taking a break. That is, of course, if I can actually operate Zoom.
Andy, quick question. Hi.
Yes.
I missed the beginning. I see it's recording. Would you be sharing that with us later?
Absolutely not. This is a once only type of, yes. We will send you the recording. And I've got a
Awesome.
whole bunch of resources to back this up.
Yes.
And as long as you don't tell the others, I've actually just been killing time till you got here. So it's all good.
Loving your sense of humor. Very British, although
British.
Although
that a
your
lot.
accent, I can't quite place. Did you say that at the beginning where you're from?
Yeah, it is both my humor and, thank you for graciously calling it that. And my accent are from England. Yeah.
But like where in England?
I was born and raised on the East Coast, but I
Okay.
now live just south of London.
Okay, very cool. Well, thank you. Enjoying it. Yeah, no, really great tips. And yeah, thank you so
All
much.
right.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
All right.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah,
Okay, right. I'm going to be back in 60
cool.
seconds. And it's quite important to say up front that it is the tool and the process, not necessarily the outcome, that I want you to pay attention to. And this is back to the patronizing teacher mode. It's like, focus on the process, not the outcome. So the only thing to be sure of here is to have a specific task or course of action that you can recognize that you are not doing. Else it becomes a really demoralizing exercise in listing all the things that you're afraid of. So one of the routes into this is to finish this sentence. What am I not doing right now that I know I should? And so the type of things that work well are, if there is a particular thing that you should be doing, the obvious one is like outreach to somebody that you're uncomfortable doing. But there are a whole bunch of others, and on screen, there's 10 examples, these kind of very concrete, specific things. Don't just pick one. I mean, if you can think of one that right now for you is the thing that you know you should be doing, but you're not, use these examples as a riff. Can you read that, by the way? Because now I've got this new layout where it's kind of above my head. Is it above my head? Is it? Oh,
No, you're good. You're good.
oh yeah. Look at that. That one. Anyway, sorry, right. Easily amused. Okay, so I'm going to put 3 minutes on the clock for this. That's okay, Shilpa. Don't worry, you can go back. So sorry, I've just got distracted by the comments. Don't worry, Shilpa, we can go back and you can watch the recording. So I'm going to put 3 minutes on the clock to write a statement. One of the things that you know you should be doing but aren't. Okay. My trusty clock. And I'm going to go on mute and off camera so that you don't feel like you're being watched over. If you have any questions, speak up because I can still hear you. Okay, final 30 seconds. Is it something specific, concrete? Okay. So the next part is, sorry, does anyone need any more time? Has everyone got a thing? Like I say, becomes a lot more clear. And the second time you do this, it's a lot easier because you kind of know what's coming next. And the first time is a bit tricky to pick out. So the next one is you're going to need 3 columns. And we're going to talk about the worst possible case, defining the fear, the worst possible case of that could happen if you took this action. And then we're going to get specific about that. We're going to list as many different ideas, as wild as you could possibly imagine, the worst possible thing that could happen. Next column is prevent. Final column is repair. So for the barrier or the thing that you want to do, what's the worst that might happen if you went and did this thing? Then how might you mitigate that risk or prevent it? And then if you did that, how permanent is it? How easy could you roll it back or recover from it? And how long would it take? So I'm going to go with 7 minutes for this. Again, I'm here if you have questions about this. I need to set this up. Set this up. Okay. All clear? Chris? Nicole? Emilio? Yeah, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Okay. All right. Splendid. Let's do it. Thank you, Kelsey. Okay, final 60 seconds. All right. Finish off your thoughts in a sentence. And we'll move on to the next bit. So this is part of the addressing how fear warps what we're thinking. And this is an attempt to focus on reversing that trait. And so it's a focus on the benefits of, even if we fail, in air quotes, what would be the benefits of an attempt or partial success? Because we're starting to build the counter narrative to all things that might go wrong. So we've recognized, defined, and mitigated those. And now it's well, even if you try and don't get to the end, what are going to be the benefits? This is a bit of a shorter one because this should be a lot more straightforward. So I'm going to put 3 minutes on the clock for this. Scribble down your answers, and I'll see you in 3 minutes' time. Okay. Turn this off. Feel old. So the last part is they can't see you. The last part is I have my 2 helpers who have just joined in from their return from school, but that's okay. So the last part is this other issue around the cost of inaction. So this is the bit where most people tend to overlook it, again, because fear masks this as an issue. So we've got 3 minutes. Describe what it would feel like, what it would be like if things stay the same. And in the meantime, I'm going to take these 3 minutes to say hello to these children, and then put them in the cage. Don't tell social services I said that.
Oh, somebody's crying.
I know. Right. Okay. And this bit often throws up quite a lot of the push factors for leaving what you are currently doing. So this tends to have quite a meta impact, as in it's often not just about failure to take action here, but you suddenly get this outpouring of the reasons why you want to go and do something else as well. So this is kind of the most important part of the work. It's this question of cost. And so what are we on time-wise? Perfect. So we're going to take a moment to just share this cost of inaction, because the costs are always greater than the mitigated risks. And so this loss aversion is a much greater motivator than the reward. And as, like I said before, everyone knows the 1979 work by Kahneman and Tversky, laying out the principles for this, and the more recent work by Kokomoto in 2018 that showed that the lambda for this is 2.5. So you are 2.5 times more likely to take action because of this loss than you are for an equivalent reward. So it is incredibly powerful. Now, how many of us are on here to see whether we're going to do this as a breakout room? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's do it in chat. Let's do it in the chat. So we're just going to take a few minutes to share an element of the work that you've just found. So in the chat, if you're prepared to, this is not, don't want to force this issue, but the thing that you were avoiding, and just jump straight to the cost of inaction, the cost of doing it, because that is the most powerful motivator in the end. And drop it in the chat. Now, whilst you're typing that away, I'm going to tell you that this process can and should be used for every action that you experience resistance or hesitation around, big or small. It's an exercise like any other, so it's treat it like a muscle. It takes practice, so don't leave it until you have like a big life changer sitting on the table. Use it for the micro things, the micro decisions in how you spend your day-to-day time and work. Now, either people are still typing because there is quite a bit to type, or we're all very shy. So give me a quick thumbs up if you are. Okay, Nicole, brilliant. Right, and Desta, okay. Desta, what is, you need a concrete version of that. What specific thing are you not doing?
I think I got a little burned out on networking for doing it so intensely So I think I've laid back a little bit on that, and I think I just need to recommit to continuing to network. Going back to the comment, I think I disclosed up front that I'm looking for a job, so trying to like stay connected to people. I think it's
Perfect. And the cost of not doing?
I may lose the momentum, or I may not stay present in people's minds who do hear about job opportunities that aren't public.
Yeah. Okay. Well, fortunately for you, the next thing we're going to talk about, actually the next but one, is all about is community building rather than networking. Because it's one of my favorite topics. So we'll get into that in a minute.
It's true. It's true. That's a better way to say it.
Yeah. Reaching out for, I'm gay, avoiding follow-up emails. Yeah, classic. Okay, right. Sarah Kent. I've always wanted to say something like this. Sarah Kent, this next bit's for you. Because we're going to talk about imposter syndrome and power. So either in the chat, oh, by the way, you might be able to see that there's a lot of common themes coming up in the what I'm not doing and the reasons why. A lot of it is this fear of exposure. Oh, yeah, fear of burning out, following up emails. That's Sarah again. Sue, possibly the same, not reaching out for that virtual chat. So, next quick question in the chat. Give me a simple yes if you have ever felt that you were at risk of being found out, or that you didn't belong, or that you shouldn't apply for a job or launch a particular plan because other people were more likely to know better or do it better than you. So basically, if you've ever had the fear of being found out. Right, daily, okay. Well, you're not alone. 65%, 75% of women have reported this, imposter syndrome, and the rest, I think, are just better at hiding it, possibly from themselves. So it is especially common in high achievers. And that's thanks to a few clever tricks that our brains play on ourselves. First is called the spotlight effect. We persistently overestimate how much others are noticing us as individuals. And there's a classic behavioral psychology study that was asking students to wear a particular sign, and it asked how many people they thought would notice them wearing the sign. And they all more than tripled the expected answer. So everyone thought that people would notice this. And the number of people was a third of the people they actually predicted. So this spotlight effect, everyone thinks that we're being watched, and we simply are not. The second is classic confirmation bias. So if we start to have these doubts, then we have a filtering out of praise and we collect criticism like it's a hobby. And the last part is there's an imposter cycle which comes with this. So we swing between over preparing and procrastinating and then chalking up any success to luck. So the psychologists that did this work in the 70s, damn it, should have written this down. Two psychologists in the 70s did this seminal piece of work in academia. And then they went on to expand this. And some of the things that they then went on to explore were the solutions to this and why do people feel it and how to address it. Now, in particular, the thing that I find interesting is that most of this comes down to the power dynamic. And so we're not going to go into this one live. I'm going to send you this worksheet because if you're experiencing this, this is a much bigger picture. But the opportunity here is to think of yourself not as a lucky survivor in a role you don't deserve, but as the CEO of Your Name Inc. Because you're not in a job, you are running a business. You are selling your time, your insight, your creativity, and you are choosing your clients. And this subtle reframe can help build confidence, self-ownership, and readiness for change. Because when you have the power and you are selling your time and skills and talent to, say, your current employer, then it becomes much more of a balanced conversation, because you get to choose who your clients are. Currently, it happens to be whoever you're working for, but you can take that elsewhere. You take it out into the open market. So as part of the resource pack that I'll send to you guys after this, you get this, the CEO of Me mindset shift. And it's a sort of like a guided exercise. It just talks about this shift in power. And personally, I found this profoundly impactful. Doesn't work for everybody, but changed the way how I saw my role in the corporate worlds that I was working. So I'm going to include that there. Kate, I think that might be useful for you in that regard, just thinking about this imposter syndrome. But hang on, who was it? Sue, you were talking about. Sue, was it you talking about networks and community? Right at the top. Sarah, sorry. Sarah was talking about imposter syndrome, not Kate. And Sue was talking about it. Right. So upfront, networking is a horrible word. It is transactional. It favors self-proclaimed extroverts. And so I'm giving you permission to stop networking and start community building. And there's two sides to this whole sort of network, this community building, our interaction with others. The first is that we experience social pressure. So we need to be very careful of who we are exposed to. So we might think that we are independent and rational beings, but as Jim Rohn famously said, we're the average of the 5 people that we spend most time with. And there was a 32-year multicultural study that found you are 57% more likely to become obese if your friendship group includes an obese person. And this is nothing new. Back to, now I think Epictetus was Greek. He said much the same thing long before the data came in. And he said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish by those who don't. Basically what he's saying is, you just really not got to give a shit about what everyone else thinks, which is very hard to do, particularly in the social age, because we are constantly fed the points of view and the opinions and the lifestyles of other people. And we are wired to absorb these values, these beliefs, the behaviors of those around us, from colleagues and friends to the social feeds that we scroll at midnight, because we are social animals and that's how we have evolved to survive. So it is hard to stay brave and stay dedicated when the environment says, why would you risk it? You're onto a good thing, even when you know a good thing isn't good anymore. So how do you fight back? And in the resources that I send afterwards, there are 2 things. One, it feels a little bit like social engineering, but it's building your support team, really taking a careful audit of the people that you spend time with and whether they are genuinely working in your best favor, best interests. Even though they may think they are, they might be holding you back and saying, well, you shouldn't be taking that kind of risk, because they love you and they want the best for you. But their view of what the best for you is and what your view is may be wildly apart. And the second one is a little bit more fun. It is an invitation to treat your social media or any kind of input as a curated magazine of which you are the sole editor. And so with 5 minutes a day, you can turn your feeds into fuel, not fear. So it's no longer doom scrolling, but it is an entirely positive experience. This is behavioral design for your future self, not in a sort of manipulative productivity hack kind of way, but in a conscious choice about who gets the seat at your mental table. So I'll send both of those as part of the resource pack, but the really useful bit that I wanted to get in is rethinking networking as an approach called the 3 C's. So networking brings up this image of like awkward small talk and transactional coffee chats and this sort of sales mode kind of energy and slightly shit wine and damp business cards. which probably shows my age more than it does anything else. But in the climate career, where jobs are often created, not posted, your ability to connect matters way more than your actual CV. And in terms of making a change internally, you need to be able to see the best practices and learn from the best. So, first of all, networking is not about finding your job. Building the community of practice of people who support you, not just to find the opportunity, but then to flourish and deliver in that role, is a much more useful and productive way about thinking about this process. So this 3 C's: curiosity, connection, consistency. Curiosity starts with you do not need to be an expert. In fact, asking smart questions is far more valuable than pretending you have all the answers. People remember that genuine curiosity. It builds trust and it opens doors without pressure. So when it comes to making those opening requests, start with questions, not asks. Start with showing an interest, not asking for something back. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a moment. The second is connection. Now, again, when you're new into a space, it might feel like you do not have much value to add. But if you see yourself as a connector and not a seeker, you start to recognize that you have more value to offer than you think. Even if you're very early into your transition, maybe it is a podcast or a link, or simply saying, you should speak to so-and-so because I saw them talking about a similar sort of thing, or reposting somebody else's work to your growing audience of people who are trying to find the solutions to the same kind of problem. Because in building this social capital, you can then use that capital when you ask for help in return. And the third is consistency. This is a long game, and it means treating it like a project, not like a panic button. So track who you have spoken to and note what you have learned. So use like a CRM tool, or even just like a simple spreadsheet. And again, I can send one like a free thing in Notion I've put together, along with a comprehensive guide for templating outreach emails and so on, to help you connect with the right people. Now, this is where we're going to do a live experiment. So you will need your browser and your LinkedIn profile loaded on screen. And I'm going to talk about LinkedIn, but before I do, there's something that's really important to recognize, is that 90% of my clients hate LinkedIn with a passion. And I think the other 10% are either possibly psychopaths or narcissists, or possibly both. It's very difficult to say. And the reason why is because most people treat LinkedIn like a social platform, and it is not. It is not somewhere that you should be scrolling. It is a tool for you to use. Now, I post every day and I help, but basically the only way I can find the people who I can help is through LinkedIn. So I spend a lot of time on this platform, and it has probably been more than 6 months since I have scrolled a feed on LinkedIn. And yet every day I have the world's leading experts in the fields that I'm interested in, giving me the very latest points of view on critical issues that I'm interested in. I don't get served ads. I don't have to scroll through shouty dickheads bollocking on about stuff I don't care about. I only expose myself to the stuff which is useful to me. And I'm going to show you how to do that. And we're going to do that live, I hope. Now this is experimental. So wait a minute. I'm going to do this and then, oh, okay. It's good, isn't it? All right. Okay. So what you're going to do is on your own profile, go to the search bar and just put the cursor in there and just press enter. And then what you're going to do is you're going to look for click posts, and then you come to from member. Now, the example I'm going to use here is I want to build a reading list. And my reading list is going to be the thought leaders in funding and policy in the climate space. And so I'm going to want to have David Carlin on this list. Show results. And next, I'm going to add Mario Hernandez on this list. Next, I'm going to have Kim Zhu. Okay. So those three people are people that I happen to know who report frequently on either how to raise funds or where the money is flowing, where the deals are. Now, I know this because I found them through a long period of research. But the beauty of this process is that as I find people, or I'm introduced to people, or I come across people whose thoughts or thinking is useful and I admire, then I can add it to this form list. And what that means is, and this is the big reveal, if I now take this URL and just drop it into here, which I did practice before, like that. My mornings I spend by going through, right, I want to see what is happening in the world of finance. And so now with one click, I get all of the content from these three leaders, which I could do from, let's say, the past week or the past month and show results and save the URL. What I'm trying to get across here is that the way to develop this community is through constant connection. But the time and effort it takes to do that is so demanding if you're having to scroll or search and go and find each of these people one at a time. So this approach enables you to have a one-click full list of everybody who is in the niche that you're looking to explore. And you could subdivide that. I think there's a maximum limit of 23, don't know why it's 23 different people that you can have in each list. And so I have a list of fellow coaches. I have a list of people in the finance space. I have a list of, what else have I got? Basically different areas of climate and sustainability that I take an interest in. Former clients, that's a great one. So I have a list of former clients. And what that enables me to do then is in the morning, I come in, pick on this, and I'll go through and say, oh, looks like Mario's been talking about this. Fantastic. Have I got something to add? Is there a question that comes out of this? In this particular case, no, but it's something that I want to perhaps recognize. He's doing the his plug and play. So I could, like that, make a comment. Typically always have, David is a phenomenal individual. And so I often spend, and that's Donald. Yeah, okay. These two people, funny enough, are probably two of my greatest inspirations in the LinkedIn space because they are thought leaders who are pracademics, which means they are both practically minded and they're academic in their approach. So I'm going to spend probably after this call, actually, 5 minutes just reading that and then see if there's a reasonable question that I can ask and make these connections. So you can go through that list very quickly. Chris, you have a question.
I actually have an insight I wanted to share because your tip is prompting one that I've been sharing with a lot of people recently, and they're very surprised by it. If you haven't already, this is a real basic one, but I'll get to the more the better one in a second. Get the LinkedIn app, and if you click on the homepage on the search button, you're going to find a little QR code. And the QR code takes you to something that you can share in networking events. So you don't have to have the wet business card to share around. And it instantly puts you in there. And so you don't have to forget. And the tip that I'm sharing with everybody, I've been using for the last 3 years, and I found it to be just incredibly helpful. Every time I go to a networking event and I collect all these things, on the train ride home, I will send a note to the person, even if they haven't accepted my request yet, because LinkedIn captures every direct message that you have back to the beginning of the conversation. It never loses it. And so that way you can just say, hey, great meeting you tonight at whatever it was. Love this, or what, a little insight. And then
Nice.
every
Yeah.
time that you wonder, how did I meet this person? You go back to the messages and then you scroll to the bottom and you're like, oh, I met them here. And then that gives you the thing. Because the other thing people hate about LinkedIn are the hundreds, if not thousands of people they don't even remember how they met.
That is brilliant. So I do the same. I've got the wallpaper from going somewhere live, swipe to change wallpaper, and let's connect on LinkedIn. But the whole sort of like, oh yeah, here is when and why and how, as an opening thing. That's a fantastic tip. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to add that to my list of things to tell other people as well. Okay, so where do we get to? Did that work, by the way? Did anyone manage to actually follow along and make that go? I kind of missed the answer because I was too busy clicking around different things there. Okay. Emilio, how was that for you?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it was good. I really, really enjoyed it, to be honest. Yeah, a lot
Okay.
to think about now. And there's some things you said in there that I think I was looking at it in the wrong perspective. I've got to be honest.
Okay. All right. So to sum up, the dip is real. If you ignore it, then you will fail. Everything you want is on the other side of this work. And what I hope to have provided is some structure and some process. Now, I am a recovering management consultant with a passion for data and behavioral science. So my worldview is either a chevron diagram or a pyramid structure, which is really great and powerful for this kind of work, although sometimes difficult in my personal relationships. So happily, the process development side of this is easy to optimize for the shortest possible time. So my work is to help talented people like you guys address the poly crisis that we face. And the world is on fire. So everything I do is designed to shortcut the time that is wasted, to help you have visible credibility and to make visible progress yourself. So with that in mind, we have 3 minutes, which is kind of like, ta-da, what perfect timing. But I did say there'd be a few minutes for questions. So we have 3 minutes. If you're interested in like taking this further, if you want to accelerate your ability to make this connection, so make this contribution, then yeah, let's talk. You want to be curious about working together? I'm always happy to chat. In the meantime, what questions do you have? If it is silence, that is also, will you send directions on how to do this? How to do what, Desta? On how to do the LinkedIn?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Trying to follow along.
actually, I know it's complicated, right? So that's what I'm saying. It's experimental. I wonder if we could do this live. But I have also recorded a short Loom video and a screen walk, which I will include as a follow-up to this.
I have a question, Andy. Just a
Yes,
quick
mate.
one. Do you find that there's a common theme of what they're making the same mistakes and that's why they're not progressing? or there's like simple things they're not doing. Because for me in this, there's things that you said that I noticed. I'm like, oh God, I've been doing this wrong for a while, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the two or three most common mistakes I see are people start by looking for the job and using job descriptions and then applying. And that's such a crushing experience because of the number of applications that are rejected. Because until you have the whole sort of criteria followed by a good fit, followed by alignment, followed by visible credibility, when you have all of that, the application in the interview is the easy bit because it's a continuation of a conversation that you're already having. But people start at the end because, like, historically, that's kind of how you got a job, right? It'd be a job in a newspaper, again, dating myself horribly, that would say, we're looking for this kind of person. And then a handful of people would be able to get a CV to that group. And then they'd pick from the CV and have an interview. And if they liked you, great. In the digital world, when something gets posted on LinkedIn, fucking thousands of people will instant apply, instant apply, instant apply, which is entirely pointless because you're just getting this generic fire hose of poor quality matches, which is why AI gets involved. And we're like, okay, we'll sift through all of this and give the best possible guess. Well, sidestep all of that by being the person for whom a role is created for or around. Now, that might sound like a completely unobtainable or unrealistic ambition, but all of those career shifts that I described at the start, they all came from an invitation. Some version of, can you come and help do this? Or what are you doing next week? Because we've got this to solve. So until my personal job application stuff was very few and far between. It was very much a come and speak to so and so. I think we could do something, because I had this constant visible credibility. So definitely one of the most common mistakes is looking at the last step and trying to just do the last step. And the other one that I see is this whole trying to keep the options open approach. Like, well, I don't want to shut down options in case something turns up. Well, something won't turn up if you're trying to keep everything open, which is why this persistent push, focus, 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 the more specific, like even to the point of parody, like in one town for one company for one person doing one thing. If you can nail that, and then you focus all of your attention on that thing, then your likelihood of getting to do that is so much greater. Now, obviously, that is a massive, like, over exaggeration, but with that kind of concept, you find that there are 20 or 30 really useful people. And I don't mean useful transactionally, I mean useful to learn from, who are operating in supply chain efficiency in alt protein manufacture, right? Or in product acceptance in by farmers and growers in ag tech, right? Like that thing. Now, it's really hard when you don't have the specialist knowledge about that thing, but you don't need the specialist knowledge. You need the transferable skills of, if you're a project manager, brilliant, go and project manage in that environment. But when you know that that's the environment you want to work in, you'll find there were probably 20 startups in that space that gives you a manageable group of people to then follow and join the conversation of.
Hey, Andy, can I build on that for a second?
Yes, please do, Chris.
So I've worked with Right Management, who is a outplacement firm here in the States, and they have an acronym. They like throwing acronyms around for networking that I think speaks to what you're talking about. They call it AIR, AIR, for advice, information, and referrals. Because all that you're doing when people get intimidated by networking, and networking should only be about asking for advice and information, and if it goes well, asking for referrals within their network. And people are willing to do this because everybody's got advice. And people have more information about what they do, and they don't talk to their spouse about it because their spouse doesn't care. And so they like talking about this kind of stuff. And the nice thing is you network. The thing is, people don't have time when they're working full time to actually go out and do this kind of information. And as you go around the industry, you become the source of what's happening now. And that's the reason why people want to pass you along and refer you, because you're actually providing value to them. You're actually bringing value in the air conversation because you're giving insights as to what's happening out there currently in the market that they haven't had the time to go out and find because the conference is in 6 months or whatever it is. So you actually provide value in the networking. And once I adopted that for my networking, it just became so much easier to do networking and just much more powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I was working with a client this morning, and we were talking about this challenge. He's got the, I don't have anything to add, I don't have anything to bid. So, well, you've got something. He wants to work in this way. AgTech came up as my example. He wants to go and work in the AgTech space, right? For seed stage startups. And I'm saying, well, you have what they don't, and that is the time to go and find the people who are in this network who are solving the problems that this company is experiencing. And so you've got a case study, right? You said one of the biggest issues, and again, this example that I've just used, is this failure to test with the growers, with the farmers, that disconnect. And so people are trying to take a commercial offering and it fails. But you're saying that you've just spoken to this group who are focused entirely on that. So you can bring the case study, say, well, you guys should speak to these guys. So you're connecting here. You're bringing this information, which is something that the founder of this seed stage, who's pulling the hair out because she can't figure out how to solve this, you've got someone who's solving it. So it's incredibly valuable, but he's not the expert. Like I say, it's the information in the connector. Okay, guys, we are running slightly over time, and my two darling children are now patiently waiting downstairs. Well, it's actually bedtime, so they're probably patiently waiting for a bedtime story. So what have we got? The whole point of this work is to help. And I can only help if you tell me what help you need. And so the guys at Work and Climate always take feedback very seriously, as do I. So on screen and in the chat, guys, can you drop is there a link? Oh, wait a minute. There you go.
I just dropped the link in the chat.
Done it already. Thank you. Splendid. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, so tell me what you need help with, basically. Tell me what went well. Tell me what you'd like to see more of. I'm here to help. The world's on fire. We have to do all we can. This is me doing all I can. And so help me help you guys. Awesome. All right. Listen, if you dropped your details in that sheet right at the start on LinkedIn, I'll drop a note to you and say hi. And if you have any questions, then just find me and ask. I'm on LinkedIn. I have a weekly newsletter. I'm here to help.
Thanks for today,
Okay.
Andy. Appreciate it.
Thank
No
you.
worries. Okay. Catch you soon, guys.